Clem has become somewhat of a internet sensation, the internet superstar in this new sense of the era. I enjoy his stories. A lot of people feel a certain way about what he's saying, what he's coming out with. Who are we to judge? You see people saying he's only saying this because he doesn't have anything and this and that and blah blah blah. Who are we to judge a man who wants to tell their side of the truth? I think that there's a few things going on with Clem and the way that he feels and why he's doing what he's doing. I think part of it is he wants to enshrine his legacy. He wants to make sure that his moment in history is stamped and he wants to have his glory day in the hot sun. And what's wrong with that? Again, who are we to judge? Yes, he does go about it in a very certain way. The main comment that I see from a lot of people is Jeezy cut him off or Jeezy doesn't talk to him because Jeezy elevated and Jeezy grew, which is understandable. I was a younger man during this time and like Jeezy's legacy is enshrined, his legacy is stamped. No one can take his legacy away from him at this point. No matter what he does moving forward or how he decides to move, his legacy is stamped. This was a time, like everything leading up to Jeezy's first album and the kind of stuff that was going on, the mixtapes, the movement, and stuff like that. Even the whole Gucci Man and Jesus situation. It was a time. It was a legitimate era. I kind of remember, I don't remember it happening at my school, but I remember when they were banning these t-shirts from high schools. Like you couldn't wear them. They wouldn't let people wear them. And it was like this big thing. It was on the news in Atlanta and everything. It was a big thing. Clearly they couldn't ban the snowman. I think it's interesting that we're getting a lot of these backstories from this part of history and this era and just the era in general, because oftentimes you don't hear those backstories. So somebody's legend becomes a legend, and there's certain parts that are missing. And I think that's what Clem is doing. Clem is filling in those blank parts of the legend. Is Clem going about it in the best way when it comes to telling these stories? Who are we to judge? He's telling his side of the truth. He's telling his side of the story. But I think at the end of the day, what's going on is Clem still has love for Jeezy. No matter how much he says Jeezy is flawed and Jeezy is this and Jeezy is that, there's clearly still love there. Clem will stand on Jeezy's reputation and in moments that really matter when it comes to this culture. Like he will uplift Jeezy's reputation. Like he'll say Jeezy was a hustler. He'll say Jeezy was never scared. He'll talk about the way in which Jeezy wrote his raps. He'll say Jeezy was really there. Jeezy was really out there. Jeezy was making money. There's no taking that away from him. He will stand on a lot of stuff that he says when it comes to Jeezy. No matter how flawed he says Jeezy is acting and he's acted in certain moments, Clem will uphold Jeezy's reputation. Even though Clem is trying to enshrine his moment and his legacy, his participation in history, he still loves Jeezy, clearly. And you know what? If they ever make a movie about Young Jeezy's life and Young Jeezy's story, I would actually want it told from the perspective of somebody like Clem. I think Clem tells great stories, and I think while Clem feels like there's flaw, I think there's a certain level of unbiased in there. Because he will tell the truth about Jeezy, he will uplift Jeezy, and then he'll give some harsh truths about Jeezy as well. I think oftentimes with these stories, no matter how hardcore they are or how much they put into it and everything like that, when it comes from the perspective of the person who the story is about, it's often fluff. You hear these stories about how Straight Outta Compton left out certain parts and there was a fluff piece. They left out very key parts because it was being told by the people who the story was about. That outside voice, that outside perspective, it gives a different twist to it. I don't know if Jeezy would ever let it fly, but again, if they ever made a movie about Young Jeezy's life, I would love to hear it from Clem's perspective. Lastly, I hope that Clem is getting his fair share, his fair, whatever he deserves for telling these stories. Because I've said it before, I'll say it again. Oftentimes, these people tell these stories on these platforms and they don't get what they deserve. So I hope he's getting what he deserves or what he feels like he deserves. He may not need it. He may just want to tell the story. And hopefully he keeps telling good stories. I mean, for that time, he may never run out of stories. So we'll see. We'll see.